Good evening, settle in comfortably, maybe tuck your blankets a little closer, pour yourself a quiet cup of tea, and gently rest your head on the pillow. Take a slow, deep breath, letting the world outside soften into a whisper, as if the night itself is wrapping you in a cozy, invisible blanket. Tonight, I invite you to imagine a world a little different from your own, where the familiar act of laundry was anything but easy, where every shirt and sock was fought for with a patience that might make even the most diligent inbox look like a swift breeze. Picture, if you will, a time when washing clothes wasn't just a matter of pressing a button or tossing them into a machine. Instead, it was a ritual, an arduous dance with shadows and sweat, a slow battle against stubborn dirt that refused to surrender easily. Like waiting in a never-ending line at the bank, except the line is your entire day, and the bank is a place where soap and water are stubborn and uncooperative partners. Imagine the sound of fabric being pounded, stretched, and wrung out, each movement a reminder of how much effort it took to restore even a single garment. And just as the darkness deepens outside your window, so too does the air around this story, thick with the scent of sweat, soap, and stories long forgotten. With every gust of wind, there are whispers of a time when washing clothes was less a task and more a test of endurance, patience, and resilience. And as your eyes begin to close, know that soon you'll drift not into sleep, but into another world, one where the air is heavy with the echoes of a laborious past, and where the simple act of laundry was a journey through pain and perseverance. The first thing you notice is the coarse texture of your bedding, rough linen that scratches your skin like 1,000 tiny pricks against your body. The air around you is thick with a stubborn, smoky scent, tinged with the acrid sting of burnt herbs and the faint, sour aroma of unwashed clothes. You shift your weight, feeling the uneven, splintered wooden planks beneath you creak and groan with every movement, their surfaces rough and splashed with patches of peeling paint and dirt. As your eyes adjust, shadows dance across the room, cast by flickering candlelight and the small, barred window that admits just enough light to reveal the cluttered chaos of the space, clothes strewn across the floor, some damp and stiff, others tangled in knots, waiting their turn for salvation. You sit up, feeling the chill of the stone or cold clay beneath your bare feet, which seem to cling to the uneven floor as if trying to anchor you to this moment. Your nose catches a confusing medley of smells: sweat, burnt herbs, stale bread, and the faint, lingering aroma of vinegar from a nearby jar. Your tongue tastes of dust and a hint of bitterness, perhaps from the leftover dregs of last night's wine or that crust of bread you'd forgotten to chew thoroughly. It's all so visceral, so unlike the sanitized, predictable routines of modern life, where laundry is a simple tap of a button. Here, it's an ordeal, an adventure in patience, a test of endurance that makes waiting in a long queue for your morning coffee seem like a quick blink. Your first instinct might be to laugh at how different everything is, how your idea of a bad morning used to be forgetting your phone charger, and now it's realizing your mask smells worse than the patients you're supposed to help. But here, in this moment, you're already immersed. You reach out and grasp a rough woolen cloak or a coarse shift, feeling the scratchy fibers against your fingertips as you pull it over your head. The fabric is stiff and unforgiving, as if it's been through 1,000 washes, none of which, of course, could have been easy. Now take a deep breath, and as you do, imagine yourself stepping out into a bustling village or a busy town square. The cobblestone streets are uneven beneath your feet, some stones chipped or sunken, creating a patchwork of rough patches and slick, muddy spots. Around you, the day begins to stir. Men and women in layered, often ill-fitting clothes, their faces weathered from exposure and hard labor. Children run past, their laughter sharp and high, dodging between animals and carts. Farmers and merchants shout to each other, their voices rising over the clatter of carts and the clanking of metal tools. Somewhere, a blacksmith's hammer strikes repeatedly against glowing iron, echoing like a heartbeat through the air. People glance at you with a mixture of curiosity and quiet respect, your presence marked by the simple, functional mask that covers your nose and mouth, a strange accessory that draws subtle glances. To them you seem both an outsider and part of the ongoing rhythm of life, a figure wrapped in mystery, a reminder of the labor that keeps everything moving. Their eyes flicker with a blend of admiration, suspicion, maybe even a little fear, as if they sense the weight of the work you've been called to do, a task far removed from the ease of modern routines. In this environment, every sound, smell and texture pulls you deeper into a world where laundry was not just a chore, but a daily battle, one fought with aching arms, stubborn soap, and water drawn from well or river, often icy cold and unyielding. The cloths, heavy and rough, resisted the effort, and the act of wringing them out was a punishment in itself, an exhausting, aching process that seemed to stretch on endlessly. The clothes, once soaked and battered, needed to be hung on lines or laid out on stones in the sun, where they would take hours to dry if they dried at all on damp, chilly days. And as you look around, it becomes clear this is not your time at all. The world you've woken into is a place where every task bears the mark of effort and patience, where the simple act of washing a shirt demands a labor of love, sweat, and persistence. To truly understand the lives of those who toiled before the invention of washing machines, you need to step back and see the bigger picture, the vast, intricate tapestry woven by generations of hard work, resilience, and a stubborn refusal to accept things any other way. So, take a moment to breathe it all in, for this is a world where laundry was not just a task, but a testament to human endurance, where every fabric cleaned was a small victory in the ongoing battle against dirt, time, and the relentless march of progress. Your era is the late Middle Ages, perhaps the 14th or 15th century, an age of castles and cloisters where kings ruled from lofty thrones and the common folk eked out their days under a sky often tinged with smoke from cooking fires and forge bellows. You've awakened in a world that's both familiar and strangely distant, a place where the fabric of society is woven with threads of hierarchy and superstition, and where the air itself carries stories of power, faith, and a touch of chaos. Imagine the society as a sprawling tapestry, the nobility sitting high on their thrones or in their grand manors, living in rooms lined with tapestries and guarded by soldiers. Beneath them, the clergy, bishops, monks, and priests hold sway over spirits and everyday life, their voices echoing in stone churches that dominate the skyline. The merchants and craftsmen form the bustling middle, peddling their wares in markets that are more chaotic than Black Friday, but with more pigs than people, their cries mingling with the clattering of carts and the shouts of vendors. And down at the bottom, the peasantry, hard-working souls who plant, harvest and toil from dawn till dusk, often in fields soaked in mud and rain, with little hope of escape from their endless cycle of labor. In this world, wealth and status are as starkly divided as a noble's stone castle from a peasant's humble hut. The rich dwell in comfort, their homes filled with imported fabrics, fine wines, and the glow of candles that cost a small fortune. The poor, meanwhile, make do with rough cloth, bread that's as hard as a brick, and the occasional glimpse of a feast only during festivals or special occasions. Power resides with those who command armies, collect taxes, or wield the influence of the church, who, let's be honest, often rule with a mixture of divine right and cunning negotiation, or sometimes just by sheer luck, like surviving an invasion or a plague. Speaking of which, the physical environment around you is a patchwork of worlds, winding dirt roads muddied by rain, towns with walls that seem more like a patchwork quilt than a fortress, and fields stretching into the horizon, dotted with cows, pigs, and the occasional wandering monk. Markets are a riot of noise, more chaotic than a traffic jam in a modern city, but with a smell that's a heady mix of fresh bread, manure, and herbs. The city's main square is a place where you might see a man in a bright, feathered hat bargaining fiercely over a chicken, or children chasing each other around a fountain, their laughter sharp and carefree amid the bustle. Your day begins with the chime of church bells or the cackle of hens, signaling the start of a routine that's more repetitive than a modern corporate meeting. You wake, perhaps, in a small room with a low ceiling and a window that admits only a slice of daylight, unless you're lucky enough to have a fire burning which fills the space with a smoky warmth and the faint scent of burning logs and herbs. Breakfast might be a crust of bread dipped in a bit of wine, or a bowl of porridge thick enough to stick to your spoon. Taking a bath? Well, that was almost a suspicious act, like announcing to your neighbors that you were planning something shady. Instead, most washed themselves in a basin, splashing cold water over their arms and face, trying to scrub away the dirt and the day's grime without much hope of complete cleanliness. Your clothes are rough and scratchy, made of wool or linen that's been worn so often they're more patch than fabric. The act of washing these garments was no quick fling into a machine, but a laborious chore, one that made modern laundry seem like a gentle spa day. Imagine pounding your shirts against stones or stirring them in a tub of water that's often tepid at best, with stubborn dirt refusing to let go. Wringing out soaked fabric required muscles that a modern gym would envy, and hanging clothes out to dry was an exercise in patience, waiting hours or even days for something to finally dry if the weather cooperated. The whole process was a slow, painful ritual, not unlike trying to get a stubborn stain out of a shirt that's been through more than a few washings. And here's the amusing part. Your idea of a hard day used to be forgetting your phone charger or spilling coffee on your keyboard. Here, it's realizing your mask smells worse than the patients you're supposed to help, or that your hands are so sore from scrubbing that you can't quite grip your tools properly. It's a kind of brutal honesty with yourself, an acknowledgement that life was a constant battle against dirt, disease, and often despair. Now picture yourself stepping outside into a world that's alive and noisy, where every day is a test of endurance. The streets are lined with carts and stalls, and the people around you move with purpose, some hurried, some slow and deliberate, as if their lives depend on each step. Perhaps a baker shouts about fresh bread, or a blacksmith's hammer rings out like a thunderclap. Children weave through the crowd, squealing and chasing stray cats, oblivious to the weight of their world. Dozens of faces turn toward you, the newcomer wrapped in your strange mask, some curious, others wary. Yet everyone's lives are woven together by the same relentless cycle of work, faith, and survival. As you look at the scene, it's impossible not to notice the stark contrasts, the grandeur of a noble's estate compared to the humble, muddy hovels of the labourers, the reverence of a priest's procession against the gritty reality of daily toil. It's a world where power is held by a few, often based on birthright or influence, and where the common folks' lives are shaped by forces beyond their control, wars, invasions, and outbreaks of the dreaded plague. The plague itself, a dark cloud looming over many communities, was believed by some to be a punishment from God or a curse unleashed by the sins of mankind. People swore by bizarre remedies, carrying onions in your pocket to ward off evil spirits or sniffing vinegar-soaked flowers as if that might purify your soul, or at least your nose. And as you ponder all this, it becomes clear you've landed in a time where hygiene and comfort are luxuries, where daily life is a constant struggle against dirt, disease, and the unpredictable whims of fate. To understand the true nature of laundry, how it was done, and how much pain and effort it required, you need to step back and see the bigger picture. This was a world where survival depended on resilience, resourcefulness, and a stubborn refusal to give in to the chaos. And just like that, you're ready to look closer, ready to descend into the intimate, gritty details of what it meant to wash clothes when the modern miracle of a washing machine was still centuries away. Your body feels stiff and cold, the muscles protesting after a night spent wrapped in coarse linens that feel more like a prickly embrace from a hedgehog than a comfortable cover. You stretch slowly, feeling each joint crackle like dry twigs, and reach out to find your basin, a simple wooden bowl darkened with age and use, waiting patiently on a rough-hewn table. As you dip your hands into the icy water, the chill bites through your fingertips, sending a shiver up your spine. The water is murky from the last wash, tinged with dirt, and the faint smell of herbs that have long since lost their potency. You splash some on your face, the coldness awakening your senses, though not quite erasing the grime that's become part of you after a night in this era of rough living. There's no soap here, just plain water, perhaps sprinkled with a handful of dried herbs or a splash of vinegar, which is thought to keep the evil spirits at bay, or at least mask a less than pleasant scent. Forget your fancy 10-step skincare routine. Here, survival is splashing some water on your face and hoping the neighbors don't faint from the smell. Inside your space, the walls are dark, made of rough-hewn wood or clay, smudged with soot from the fire that crackles softly in the hearth, its wood burning with a smoky aroma that mingles with the scent of damp earth and dried herbs. The furniture is sparse, a sturdy wooden table, a few chairs with legs that wobble, and a shelf lined with clay pots, iron utensils, and a battered basin or two, their surfaces scratched and stained from years of use. The floor is uneven, cold stone or packed dirt, creaking under your weight as you stand and move about. The faint aroma of burning wood and damp fabric fills your nose, a reminder of the simplicity and the hardships of domestic life in this time. Every object feels solid, honest, and unpolished. No sleek plastics or shiny surfaces here, just rough textures and authentic wear, like the leather of your shoes, stiff and uncomfortable, pressing against your feet as you prepare to face the day. Your clothing reflects the practical, unadorned world you inhabit, thick, itchy wool tunics that scratch like 1,000 tiny thorns against your skin, heavy leather shoes that pinch and rub, and a coarse cloak that offers little comfort but plenty of protection from wind and rain. You tug on these garments, feeling the rough fabric against your skin, and grimace at how stiff and unforgiving they are, like hugging a hedgehog if hedgehogs wore layers of dirt and smelled of smoke. Your body reacts with a series of small protests, an itch here, a shiver there, your skin already irritated from the coarse cloth and the cold air seeping through the cracks in the walls. It's a far cry from the soft fabrics, plush pajamas, or the cozy leggings that modern life offers. No, here, you wear what's necessary, not what's comfortable. You glance at your meager breakfast, a piece of stale bread, hardened and crumbly, perhaps a slice of aged cheese, with a flavor as sharp as a winter wind, and a thin broth that's more water than anything nourishing. The taste is bland, the texture gritty, but it's enough to stave off the hunger that gnaws at your belly. Drinking is a simple matter. Some water from the basin, if it's clean enough, or perhaps a sip from a clay jug filled with lukewarm liquid. You might notice a faint tang of vinegar or herbs, a crude attempt to add flavor or ward off illness, depending on what's available. Modern coffee or tea? Impossible. Instead, your mornings are a ritual of modest sustenance and resilience, with each swallow a small act of defiance against the hardships of daily life. Hygiene practices here are practical, if not exactly luxurious. You might own a handful of rough towels or cloths, more for wiping away sweat and dirt than for pampering your skin. A sprig of herbs, dried and crushed, might be burned as incense, filling the room with a faint herbal aroma that's believed to purify the air or chase away bad spirits. Some believe that a quick prayer or a blessing can help keep illness at bay, perhaps a cross traced on the forehead or a whispered refrain before stepping outside. And then there are the odd, almost amusing rituals, like carrying a small amulet or talisman, thought to ward off disease, or muttering a prayer to Saint Roch, the protector, against plagues. If you're especially superstitious, you might burn a pinch of incense or sprinkle vinegar around the doorway, hoping to keep the foul spirits or sickness from entering. It's all part of the daily routine, an unspoken acceptance that cleanliness is not about soap or showers, but about faith, small gestures, and a lot of hope. As you prepare to step out of your modest dwelling, you feel the weight of the day pressing down, the cold, the dirt, the constant effort to keep the grime at bay. Your mind drifts to the days when a bath was almost suspicious, like announcing to the neighbors that you were planning something shady. Instead, you splash water on your face, wipe your hands on a rough cloth, and make sure your hair, if you still have any, looks presentable enough to avoid attracting unwanted attention. Every movement is deliberate, each action an act of survival in a world that values resilience more than comfort. The space around you is alive with sounds, smells, and textures, an everyday symphony of a life that's both humble and unyielding. The crackling fire pops and sizzles, sending up a plume of smoke that mixes with the scent of damp wood and stale air. The walls seem to breathe with your every breath, darkened by soot and age, and the floor beneath your feet is cold and uneven, sometimes giving way with a faint creak or a squeak that reminds you of the fragility of this simple home. The air carries a faint aroma of damp clothing, wet wool, and the faint tang of burnt herbs, an aroma that's become as familiar as your own heartbeat, yet never quite pleasant. And so you finish your morning routine, more a ritual of endurance than of indulgence, and prepare to face the outside world. You gather your cloak, tighten your rough shoes, and step beyond your door. The streets await, bustling and chaotic, filled with people in their rough fabrics, their voices rising in a chorus of commerce, gossip, and prayer. The market is noisier than a modern subway at rush hour, but instead of the hum of engines, there's the clatter of carts, the bleating of goats, and the shouting of vendors selling everything from fresh fish to dried herbs. As you walk through this lively scene, you can't help but notice the myriad ways people cope with their daily struggles, some with a prayer, others with a joke, and many simply with silent resilience. But for now, you leave behind your small, cluttered sanctuary of soapless, rough linen hygiene, ready to face whatever the day has in store. Because here, in this world of coarse fabrics, smoky hearths, and stubborn dirt, survival is an art, and hygiene a humble act of faith, hope, and a little bit of stubbornness. And as you step forward, the story of your day begins, each moment shaped by centuries of tradition, effort, and the enduring human spirit. The air is thick with the chill of early morning, a faint fog curling around your feet like a silent, translucent cloak. The ground beneath you is uneven, damp muddy patches where the rain has seeped into the dirt, mixed with patches of dry, dusty stones that crunch softly under your boots. The distant shouts of vendors, the clatter of carts over cobblestones, and the murmur of life echo around you, a symphony of a community already stirring into its daily rhythm. You carry with you the tools of your role, perhaps a small leather satchel filled with dried herbs, a cane with a carved handle, or a simple cloth mask with a long curved beak stuffed with fragrant herbs. The fabric of your cloak shuffles softly as you move, and the weight of your duties presses on your shoulders as you begin your day. Your task, whatever your role, whether healer, priest, soldier, or craftsman, is woven into the very fabric of this busy, layered society. You are expected to serve, to protect, to judge, or perhaps to maintain the fragile balance of order amid chaos. The community looks to you with a mixture of reverence, suspicion, and sometimes outright fear. Children stare at you, eyes wide and curious, yet half frightened, like they sense the importance of your presence, but also the danger that lurks behind your serious expression. Merchants and townsfolk glance your way, some nodding respectfully, others avoiding eye contact, wary of your authority or the rumors that swirl around your role. Soldiers, clad in rough wool or chainmail, regard you with a mixture of respect and caution, their hands never far from their weapons, ready for trouble or perhaps just to keep the peace. Religious figures, robed and solemn, cross themselves or murmur prayers as you pass, sensing the sacred or superstitious power that surrounds your work. You move through the bustling marketplace, the air thick with smells, fresh bread baking in an oven, the sharp tang of cured meats hanging from wooden stalls, the pungent aroma of herbs and spices piled high in clay pots. The clang of metal on metal rings out from the blacksmith's shop, where a hammer strikes an anvil with rhythmic force, sparks flying like tiny stars in the smoky air. The clatter of carts, the squeal of pigs, and the shouts of vendors hawking their wares form a lively backdrop to your morning routine. You weave between these sounds, your presence marked by the distinctive weight of your tools and your determined expression. Your daily duties are clear, yet arduous. If you're a healer or doctor, you visit the sick, knocking on doors, stepping into dark, cramped cottages filled with the smell of damp straw and burning candles. You examine the afflicted, feeling their fevers radiate through their clothes, the heat of their skin against your fingertips. You might burn herbs in a small tin or mix poultices from mud, herbs, and vinegar, each task a sensory ritual that combines scent, touch, and sight. You prepare herbal infusions, boiling dried leaves over a smoky fire, the bitter aroma filling your nostrils and reminding you of old remedies and superstitions. Your hands are constantly busy, applying salves, stitching wounds with rough thread, or burning clothes soaked with disease, believing perhaps that the fire's smoke and the pungent smell of herbs will purge the evil from the body. If your role is more spiritual, perhaps a priest or a monk, you perform rituals to ward off illness, sprinkling holy water, lighting incense that fills the air with a sharp, resinous scent, or chanting prayers that seem to echo off the stone walls of the village. You carry amulets or relics, believing them to possess protective powers, and sometimes whisper blessings over the sick, your voice blending with the crackling of the fire and the rustle of worn robes. The atmosphere is thick with superstition. Some believe that carrying a handful of onions in your pocket keeps away the plague, while others swear that a pinch of salt under the tongue wards off evil spirits. The rituals are simple but deeply ingrained, an unspoken agreement that faith, combined with a dash of herbs and a sprinkle of superstition, might just keep death at bay. In the broader community, life moves with a steady, relentless pace. Markets are lively, more chaotic than a modern supermarket on a busy Saturday, with farmers shouting about fresh vegetables, fishmongers hawking their catches, and women bargaining over bolts of cloth. Town criers announce news, sometimes with exaggerated flair, and processions wind through the streets, priests bearing relics, soldiers marching in formation, or villagers celebrating festivals with singing, dancing, and the burning of effigies. Every event, every ritual, every chore is performed with a sense of purpose rooted in tradition, faith, and necessity. You might find yourself participating in or observing these moments, your presence a reminder of the vital role you play, whether as healer, protector, or spiritual guide. Your responsibilities may include more than just the immediate, tangible tasks. You might be called to prepare for the next outbreak, burning contaminated clothing and bedding, or to carry amulets and charms as a form of spiritual insurance. Perhaps you assist in the community's collective efforts during harvest, helping to coordinate labor or oversee safety during dangerous work in the fields. Sometimes your work involves little more than standing watch, listening for signs of sickness, watching for signs of unrest or invasion, or comforting the worried and the sick alike. It's a life filled with sensory richness, a tapestry of sights, sounds, smells and textures that define your daily existence. The clang of metal, the scent of burning herbs, the rough texture of worn fabrics, the taste of stale bread and bitter herbs, all woven together into the fabric of your routine. And yet beneath the surface there's an undercurrent of anxiety and superstition. Every cough, every fever, every shadow in the corner might be a sign of impending doom, a reminder that you're working in a world where disease and death are always just a breath away, but you carry on, performing your duties, navigating the complex web of social expectations and managing the fears and hopes of those around you. Your role is integral, yet often thankless, wrapped in layers of tradition, faith, and necessity. And as you move through the day, sometimes hurried, sometimes contemplative, you realize that your work is more than just a task. It's a small act of defiance against the chaos, a testament to resilience in a world that demands everything from you: strength, patience, and a stubborn belief that somehow, through all the dirt and danger, life will go on. You feel it everywhere, this persistent, almost suffocating presence of fear, like a thick fog that clings to the streets, to the walls of the churches, to the very air you breathe. It's in the way the villagers glance nervously over their shoulders, whispering prayers under their breath as you pass by, eyes darting away if your shadow falls too long or too close. The whispers are soft but urgent, a constant reminder that danger lurks unseen in every corner, diseases that sweep through the town like invisible wolves, famine gnawing at stomachs as silently as a shadow creeping behind a candle, wars spilling blood on distant horizons, and divine punishments raining down on those who stray from the path of righteousness. You can feel it in the heavy silence that blankets the streets during the church services, when the bells toll for a funeral and the mourners stand shoulder to shoulder, heads bowed, clutching rosaries as if they could hold back the terrible unknown. The massive wooden doors of the church creak open, releasing a scent of old wax, incense, and the faint, lingering smell of death, an aroma that's become as familiar as your own reflection in the worn mirror. In these moments you sense the collective heartbeat of a community trembling at the edge of unseen horrors, each prayer a fragile shield against the chaos that threatens to undo everything. Religiosity is woven into the fabric of everyday life, a constant dance of rituals and symbols. Before you undertake any task, whether preparing herbs, tending to the sick, or even crossing the street, you perform the sign of the cross, your fingers tracing the shape of the sacred, as if to ward off the evil eye. You see children clutching tiny rosaries, their small hands trembling slightly as they mutter prayers learned by rote. Men and women kneel in the dim light of their homes, whispering blessings over their food, their voices blending with the crackling of candles and the faint hum of distant chants. Monks cloaked in simple brown robes sing hymns from the cloisters, their voices rising and falling like waves, filling the air with a sense of something greater, though perhaps also tinged with the fear that divine wrath could descend at any moment. The smell of burning incense, a pungent mixture of myrrh and frankincense, permeates the air, a fragrant armor against the darkness outside. It's a scent that clings to your clothes and hair, lingering like a reminder that salvation is a prayer away, and that every flickering candle is a tiny beacon against the night's terrors. Today, you might scroll through social media for comfort, maybe scrolling past memes and videos, but here people clutch rosaries like life jackets in a storm, cling to their faith as if it could somehow keep the plague, the famine, or the divine punishment at bay. Superstition is as common as bread and cheese, a set of rituals and objects that serve as both hope and defense against the unknown. You've seen amulets carved from bone or stone, hung around necks or pinned to clothing, believed to ward off spirits or disease. Some carry bundles of dried herbs, stinging nettle, garlic, or sage, tied tightly with twine, the scent pungent and sharp. Others believe that hanging a tiny, carved wooden figure of a saint in the window can keep evil spirits from entering the home, while a handful of grains spilled on the doorstep is thought to trap malevolent forces outside. It's almost amusing, like the medieval version of essential oils or aromatherapy, except with a slightly higher chance of accidental poisoning. Some believe that carrying a dead toad in your pocket could ward off the plague, or that whipping yourself in the town square bareback and raw might earn you divine mercy. You've heard stories of villagers beating themselves bloody, their screams lost in the cacophony of city life, all in the hope that some divine eye might be moved to mercy. Your community is a tapestry of shared fears, united by the dread of the pestilence that's always lurking just beyond the horizon, ready to pounce. The fear of the plague is so pervasive that it shapes every interaction. When an outbreak begins, the town transforms into a tense hive of suspicion, with accusations flying faster than the rats that carry the disease. People whisper about witches and heretics, believing that malevolent spirits or evildoers intentionally cursed the town. You see mobs gather in the square, their faces twisted with fear and fury, ready to lynch someone they suspect might be a witch or a spy, anyone who see. It's in the way neighbors lend a hand, not just to share bread or keep warm, but to offer something rarer. A heartbeat's worth of comfort, a voice that eases the weight of the world, even if only for a moment. You see it in families gathered tightly under one roof. Yet sometimes that same roof feels like a small, crowded prison. Forget Netflix family dramas. Here, your cousin might sleep on the cold, uneven floor just 2 feet away from you every single night, sharing a blanket, sharing stories, sharing the unspoken understanding that they're all each other has in this unpredictable world. The bonds are woven into the very architecture of daily life, layered with obligation, loyalty, and sometimes the quiet despair of being trapped in a cycle you can't escape. Amidst this, friendship flickers like a candle in the dark, small, fragile, yet fiercely burning. You watch neighbors helping each other repair a broken fence, sharing a pot of stew from a single cauldron, or whispering advice over the flickering light of a lantern. These are moments of true solidarity, where trust is built one shared burden at a time, though of course in times of plague or paranoia, that trust can be as fragile as a cracked pot. Rumors and whispers warp friendships, turning allies into suspects overnight. You've heard of neighbors accusing each other of witchcraft simply because someone's cat looked too fat or because a child sneezed twice in a row. Still, beneath the suspicion, the human need to connect persists, because loneliness here might be more dangerous than any disease. And then there are the stories of love, romances that bloom in secret corners, fleeting glances exchanged across smoky taverns, promises whispered in shadows. Imagine a couple stealing a moment during a village festival, where the air is thick with the smell of roasted meat, the sound of fiddles and the laughter of children. Their eyes meet, and for a heartbeat, the world stands still. Perhaps they exchange a quick, shy smile, an unspoken vow to meet again if the plague doesn't claim them first. Tinder swipes? Here, it's more like a glance across a crowded room, a furtive handshake or a whispered proposal under the cover of darkness, with the promise of a dance if the fiddler's strings don't snap first. Love might be risky, especially when suspicion or social hierarchy threaten to tear lovers apart. But it's also a vital thread tying lives together, a reminder that amid chaos, the human heart still beats stubbornly. Speaking of hierarchy, you see how social status shapes every interaction. Nobles look down from their high towers, their silken robes fluttering in the breeze, trusting their wealth to keep them safe, yet still wary of the common folk's whispers. Clerics, clad in simple robes or shimmering vestments, hold sway over both body and soul, their words wielding power and fear in equal measure. You, as a plague doctor or healer, occupy a strange middle ground, respected by some, feared by others, never fully trusted. Your mask and long coat make you a figure of awe and suspicion. People cross themselves when you approach, whispering prayers or curses under their breath. Some see you as a savior, while others believe you're just another agent of the divine punishment they dread. Your presence sparks whispers. Do they think you're cursed or blessed? Perhaps both, depending on who you ask. Community rituals and gatherings are the thread that keeps the social fabric from unraveling completely. You've seen processions winding through the cobblestone streets, cloaked in colourful robes, carrying relics and singing hymns that echo off the stone walls. The smell of incense drifts through the air, sweet, smoky, almost edible, mingling with the aroma of fresh bread baked for festival days or funerals. Townsfolk gather in the square for lively markets, where the clatter of wooden carts and the calls of vendors create a chaotic symphony. During festivals, everyone wears their best, brightly embroidered tunics, layered skirts, and flower crowns, colors that seem to defy the gloom outside. You feel the rough touch of handshakes, the coolness of a borrowed cloak, the warmth of shared food passed from one hand to another. These moments, whether joyous or somber, are the lifeblood of the community, a collective effort to maintain some semblance of normalcy amid the chaos. But it's not all warmth and camaraderie. The social landscape is tinged with rivalry, jealousy, and suspicion. You've heard whispers of disputes over land, accusations of witchcraft, or petty jealousies that explode into outright accusations, sometimes with deadly consequences. A neighbor's new cow might be worth a fight, or a well-timed rumor could ruin a reputation forever. The community's unity is delicate, fragile as a spider's web, and the threat of social exile, or worse, punishment, hangs over everyone's head. Even the most innocent remark can become a weapon if used by the right or wrong person in the right or wrong moment. You've seen neighbors turn on each other, not because they want to, but because fear makes everyone suspicious, each person a potential threat, each smile hiding a secret. Your role in this web of human relationships is complex. As a healer or doctor, you are both a trusted figure and a potential target of suspicion. People look at you with a mixture of hope and dread, praying you can save them, yet wary of what your presence might mean. Some whisper that you're an agent of divine wrath, others that you secretly work with the devil. When you pass through the marketplace or the churchyard, you catch sideways glances, some filled with gratitude, others with fear. You might be called upon to perform rituals, to soothe the dying, or to burn contaminated clothing. Your hands, always busy, carry the weight of both life and death. And in these interactions you realize that beneath the surface of fear and superstition lies a profound, unbreakable human need to belong, to trust, to love, and to believe that somehow the bonds they forge can withstand even the darkest threats. And so, even amidst the chaos, the suspicion, and the dread, life persists, woven tightly into the fabric of human connection. You see it in the small gestures, a neighbor sharing a loaf of bread, a child clutching a worn doll, a pair of lovers sneaking a stolen kiss beneath a flickering lantern. These acts of kindness, these fragile promises remind you that in this brutal world, what keeps people alive isn't just medicine or faith. Sometimes it's the simple fact that they refuse to face the darkness alone. Because, after all, no matter how heavy the shadows, the human heart will always find a way to beat on, stubborn and resilient, echoing softly like a distant song in the night. Before you lies a modest feast, not the kind your modern mind might conjure with its neon glow and endless variety, but a carefully prepared tableau of simple, hearty sustenance. A trencher of coarse, cracked bread sits at the center, its surface uneven and dusted with a thin layer of flour, inviting your fingers to tear into its rough crust. Around it, small bowls of pottage, thick, steaming mixtures of grains, legumes, and root vegetables send up gentle vapors that mingle with the scent of boiled onions and a hint of herbs. Perhaps a piece of salted fish, flaky and dried in the smoky air, rests beside a wedge of yellowed cheese, its aroma sharp but familiar. You notice the rough carved wooden spoons and a few dull knives, their blades dulled by years of use. Utensils are scarce. Most eat with their hands, fingers coated in the remnants of breadcrumbs or smears of gravy. A simple cloth napkin, stained with traces of yesterday's meal, is folded beside a clay cup filled with cloudy, slightly sour water. Water that tastes of earth and stone, a reminder of how scarce and precious clean drinking supplies are. As you settle, you become aware of the textures, the gritty crust of the bread, the slickness of the fish's skin, the rough grain of the pottage's vegetable chunks, each piece a reminder of life's austerity. Today's menu is humble but nourishing, a reflection of both necessity and resilience. For the common folk, this is everyday fare, pottage thick enough to fill the belly, bread that's as sturdy as a shield, and a drink that keeps dehydration at bay, even if it leaves a faint, lingering taste of iron and mud. But glance toward the table's end and you might see a platter of more refined fare, roasted chicken, a handful of plump grapes, a small jar of honey, reserved for the local lord or visiting noble, whose table gleams with shining metal goblets and silverware, and where spices like pepper and saffron are sprinkled with a touch of arrogance. The etiquette here is simple but strict. Before you eat, a brief prayer or blessing is murmured, perhaps asking for divine mercy or simply giving thanks for what little sustenance is granted. Hands are washed carefully in a basin of cold water, the rough cloth scrubbed over fingers, nails, and palms, a ritual that separates the sacred from the profane. The order of eating is observed. Elders and those of higher status take the first portions, measured out with care, each bite a small act of respect in a world where scarcity often means every morsel is a treasure. On fast days or during Lent, the menu shifts. Fish replaces meat, bread becomes lighter, and the table is cleared of indulgence, replaced by the quiet discipline of restraint. You might hear a prayer whispered over the bread, a Latin invocation or a simple blessing that echoes softly in the quiet of the room. Sometimes a communal prayer is sung, stirring words rising in unison, blending with the crackling of the hearth fire, the faint scrape of a spoon against clay. It's almost as if the act of eating is a sacred ritual, more than just fulfilling hunger. It's a moment of shared faith and endurance. The flavors are simple but layered, the saltiness of preserved fish, the bitterness of old herbs, the faint sweetness of dried fruits, dates, figs, hidden among the bread crumbs or tucked into a small cup of vinegar. The taste of sour, the aroma of burnt wood from the hearth, the faint, lingering bitterness of stale ale or weak wine, all combine to forge an experience that sharpens your senses, filling your belly and your mind with a quiet gratitude for what remains. And as you eat, the world outside continues, market vendors shouting prices, children laughing in the streets, the distant tolling of church bells marking the hour. The day's meal, humble as it is, becomes a pause, a moment where the worries of plague, war, or famine pause just long enough for you to feel human again. After the last crumb is gone, the table empties, and the town breathes in a collective sigh, ready to face whatever comes next. Perhaps it's time for music, for laughter, for small acts of bravery or simple pleasures, because after a meal like this, the city's night awaits, not with dread, but with the promise of stories, song, and the faint hope of tomorrow. And as the shadows lengthen, you can almost hear the distant hum of a lute, the murmur of voices gathering in the tavern, ready to turn the cares of the day into tomorrow's memories. You step away from the rustic table, your feet carrying you softly into the lively embrace of the evening. Outside, the world shifts into a tapestry of shadows and warm glow. Lanterns flicker like fireflies caught in glass, their lights spilling over cobblestones, slick with dampness. The scent of stale beer, mingled with the faint aroma of dried herbs and the sweet tang of fermented grains, drifts in the air as you walk past the open doors of the tavern. Inside, the murmur of voices rises and falls like a gentle tide, punctuated by the clatter of mugs and the scrape of rough wooden stools. The room breathes with life, bodies leaning into the warmth of the fire, stories unfolding in whispers, dice tumbling like promises of luck, only to land with a dull thud that sounds almost like a plea for better fortune. You observe the game of nine men's Morris, the pieces sliding over the carved wood in slow, deliberate movements, each move a quiet gamble, each roll of the dice a fleeting hope that dissolves as predictably as the end of a borrowed coin. The dice themselves seem to roll with a promise of luck, and fall, as always, like a boleto no banco, unpredictable and indifferent to your wishes. The laughter that erupts from the crowd is rough but genuine, a melody that rises above the crackling fire and the faint squeal of a strained lute. Someone strums a few chords, a simple melody that hums in the background, while others hum along, a discordant chorus of voices, warm and unpolished, yet full of the kind of camaraderie that makes the heart ache and swell at once. You find yourself drawn into the rhythm, the simple steps of a dance, feet moving in unison, hands clasped or resting on shoulders, spinning in a circle that attempts to chase away the night's shadows. Sweat beads on brows, a mixture of exertion and the humid air, and the scent of woolen cloaks damp from the day's toil mingles with the smoky aroma of burning wood. The dance is unrefined, yet earnest, each step a small act of defiance against the darkness outside, a reminder that life still pulses beneath the weight of fear. Nearby, a makeshift stage hosts a morality play. Clumsy puppets in patchwork costumes enact stories of saints and sinners, their voices echoing in simple verses. The audience watches with rapt attention, some giggling at the absurdity, others silent in reverence, caught between the sacred and the absurd. During the festival of St. John, the air feels thicker with the scent of burning candles and herbs, the glow of the flames flickering like tiny stars caught in a jar. Processions wind through the streets carrying candles and singing hymns, their voices rising in a hymn of hope and remembrance. The scent of Sierra Quente and crushed rosemary mingles with the cool night air, an offering to the saints and a shield against the lurking fears that never truly leave. And yet, in the midst of these celebrations, shadows linger. You see the flagellants, those penitents in rough robes, their faces hidden beneath hoods, marching through the square, their steps heavy with the weight of penance. Their voices rise in sermons that cut through the night, their words echoing like distant thunder, reminding all that salvation often comes at the cost of pain. Some curiously gather, eyes wide with a mixture of awe and trepidation, watching the flagellant's acts of devotion, an ancient dance of suffering that feels both alien and strangely familiar. You, as the town's healer, sense the mixture of reverence and fear in the crowd. A hand, perhaps trembling slightly, reaches out and gently presses your shoulder, seeking a quick word, a blessing, a reassurance, a reminder that even in these dark rites, hope persists. You nod softly, touching the edge of a nearby roof's beam to ward off ill omens, your touch a quiet act of protection amid the collective trembling. The night stretches on, a delicate balance of raucous joy and quiet dread. Laughter and song challenge the shadows, yet the distant toll of the church bell, slow and deliberate, reminds you that life is a fragile string, easily snapped by the smallest misstep. Between a lively jig and a solemn prayer, the town's heartbeat is both resilient and vulnerable. When the last song fades and the flickering lights die down, the city breathes a collective sigh, remembering that every festival, every dance, every prayer is both a celebration and a reminder. Tudo começa e tudo termina. The shadows retreat, but not without leaving a trace, as the night whispers of the cycle that sustains us all: birth, promise, departure. And as you turn away from the lively scene, a faint smile touches your lips. The city, with all its joy and fear, is alive, a testament to the enduring dance of life and death, of hope and despair. O primeiro choro, quase como sino minúsculo, ecoa na quietude da manhã. Uma nota de esperança e de medo, de promessa e de finitude. A vida, tão frágil e preciosa, começa ali, no instante em que o destino se entrelaça com o sopro divino, marcando o início de uma jornada que, inevitavelmente, levará ao partir. Cada respiração, cada suspiro, uma lembrança de que tudo que nasce carrega a semente do fim. E essa compreensão, embora silenciosa, é o fio invisível que une os ciclos da existência. Na passagem do tempo, vêm as promessas e uniões que sustentam o tecido social. Na porta da igreja, as mãos entrelaçadas, as fitas que simbolizam votos silenciosos, o pão e o sal que representam a vida e a prosperidade. A comunidade testemunha muda observa com olhos atentos e sorrisos reservados, enquanto uma breve música preenche o ar. uma melodia que fala de esperança, de continuidade, de laços que resistem ao vento da mudança. O dote, as bênçãos, os juramentos feitos em voz baixa, tudo isso sustenta a esperança de que o amor, mesmo em tempos difíceis, seja uma âncora firme num mar de incertezas. No trabalho, no ofício que se passa de mãos em mãos, há uma transmissão silenciosa de histórias e de saberes antigos. Conselhos de avós, objetos herdados que carregam memórias de gerações, um banco marcado por anos de histórias, onde tantos sentaram, choraram, riram. Cada objeto, uma testemunha muda do tempo que passa, carregando a essência de quem veio antes, lembrando que nossas raízes permanecem, mesmo quando os corpos se vão. Quando a doença chega, a cena muda. O leito simples, às vezes uma cama de palha, onde a unção é feita com gestos suaves, rezas murmuradas que tentam, com esperança, tocar o divino. Quando a peste ou a morte silenciosa se insinuam, tudo se torna mais rápido, os rituais se encurtam, a pressa toma conta e o silêncio, por vezes, é mais pesado que qualquer palavra. Você, se for médico ou curandeiro, sente o peso dessa impotência digna, o esforço de aliviar o sofrimento sem poder evitar o que é inevitável. Ainda assim, há uma beleza serena na aceitação, uma certeza de que a vida, embora breve, é um milagre que se repete, como o ciclo que nunca cessa. E chega a hora do último descanso. Uma procissão silenciosa, o sino grave que toca ao longe, a cera pingando lentamente nas velas acesas, a terra fria que acolhe o corpo. Os enterros, simples, às vezes em valas comuns, silenciam o tumulto do mundo, enquanto nomes e preces permanecem, como sementes que germinam na memória. A lembrança, assim como a oração, é uma luz que nunca se apaga completamente, um fio invisível que conecta os vivos aos que partiram. Em mesas, ao redor de fogueiras ou na sombra de igrejas, as famílias se unem para lembrar, para homenagear, para manter viva a essência daqueles que se foram. Cada nome pronunciado é um lembrete suave de que, embora o ciclo seja inexorável, há beleza na aceitação, na reverência silenciosa à passagem de cada alma. No vitral colorido de uma capela ou na pintura de uma dança macabra, as caveiras, os esqueletos que lembram a mortalidade, há uma mensagem antiga, profunda, que fala de humildade e de esperança. O tempo, ensina o Eclesiastes, é de nascimento e morte, de começo e fim, um ciclo que se repete sem aviso, sem notificações, mas cheio de estações e de momentos que se sucedem com a naturalidade de uma vela que se consome lentamente, deixando para trás apenas a luz suave que ainda brilha na escuridão. Você fecha os olhos, a respiração desacelera, e na quietude do seu quarto, sente o peso do dia, a suavidade da cama, a tranquilidade que vem ao reconhecer que a vida, com todos os seus ciclos, é um milagre que se repete incansavelmente. Cada pão partido, cada caneca erguida, cada risada em um canto esquecido da rua é uma celebração silenciosa dessa dádiva, uma lembrança de que, mesmo na finitude, há beleza e esperança. Assim, enquanto a vela diminui, o calor permanece. Feche os olhos, a cidade continua e você também. Entre sinos e sussurros, há descanso. Agora é a sua vez de dormir.